Don't you love courage? Senator Ron Johnson up there in Wisconsin, holding the line. President Trump is on the phone with all the power of his energy and charisma and strength, getting everybody to pass his big, beautiful bill. And Senator Ron Johnson and a couple of bold Congress voices, and like Chip Hill down here in Texas, and we got Rand Paul. These guys are saying, hold your horses. The biggest threat to America is the potential economic breakdown we have from unsustainable debt. We can take this tiger and we could tame it. 1%, 2% per category. We could give us, no one will even feel it if we had the courage to act. Sorry to say, only a few politicians have the courage to act. They'd rather bankrupt the future so that they have a career right now. That's why you've got to go to lancewallnau.com/gold. Understand why gold is shooting up to close 49% up in 1 year, 70-some percent in the last 24 months to 3 years. I'm telling you, man, there's a reason why the silver is mine and the gold is mine, the Lord says. And when everything shakes, God is saying some things are going to retain their value. It's just the way it's going to be. Go to lancewallnau.com/gold. Get the full 20-page download report on why the dollar is under siege and how you can protect yourself, your assets, your future, and your retirement. A lot of my friends have taken action, and they tell me they're glad they did. lancewallnau.com/gold. At least get informed. And then let's get into what's happening with Elon Musk and all the work he did for Doge and how much of that's getting put into permanency. We're going to cover all that in today's broadcast. You'll love it. None of us are going to forget what a weird, dystopian, strange nuclear winter we had after the 2020 election scramble and Trump flew back to Mar-a-Lago. We have the January 6th, incident that happened in Washington. I was there and suddenly watched it transform into something it wasn't, into some kind of an attack upon democracy, which it never was. And I don't want to forget those days because we went all the way from there to Donald Trump being back in the White House and the January 6 people that had spent so much time in prison. I don't want to forget them. We got Memorial Day behind us, but I want to remember the people that have been in the spiritual war and have been political prisoners. And I want to bring someone I've been looking forward to interviewing for a while, John Strand, onto the show today. John, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Lance.
All right. Now tell me, for those of my audience that don't know the story, you're at January 6th. And why were you there? And give us the quick version of what happened, because it'll give context to folks that need to know you.
Sure. So I'm the creative director at America's Frontline Doctors, nonprofit organization that was at the forefront of exposing the COVID propaganda and the lies at that time. So I was acting in my professional capacity, doing my job that day. I was scheduled to be there along with my colleague, who's the founder. And we were going to be part of a group of folks speaking at a rally with a government-approved permit. And that also included numerous congresspeople, sitting congressmen, that were going to be speaking at that event as well. So that's why I was there. And I was looking for a speech, looking for a stage. We got caught in a crowd that eventually got flushed inside of the building and so forth. But that's why I was there. I was not there to attack democracy, of course. I was there to exercise First Amendment rights and support those who were also exercising that right in support of our democratic rights to have our voices heard.
So how is it you ended up becoming a political prisoner? What took place?
Well, as you mentioned, things were not honestly represented about that day. I think the irony is that there actually was an attack on democracy. That would have been the rigged election of 2020, which caused that protest to happen. But because it was not accurately reported and honestly handled by many, I was indicted by the federal government. I was violently raided by a FBI SWAT team arrest that was fit for a Colombian drug cartel. It was incredibly violent, fascist, to be frank, and traumatic. I was disappeared in the jail for 4 days without a phone call and no word from to my family about where I was so they finally got a private investigator to find out where I was and get me bailed out. And then I was at war with the government for the next 2 years until I was put into prison because I, among other reasons, I refused a fraudulent plea deal. Government coerced many, many J6ers into plea deals full of lies in many ways. And I refused that plea deal, which made my circumstance much more dire.
All right, so for instance, what were they saying you had to confess to? That you were there to foment or insurrection and attack the government?
Essentially, yes. It's essentially the statement of fact in the plea deals for all J6ers. It supported the government's version of events that day. So they were saying that a large number of people conspired ahead of time to overthrow the government and knew in advance that the plaza was a restricted area and that they were breaking the law by being there. I mean, all of these things are false and honestly, they're ludicrous. But that is the statement of fact that the plea deal sets forth. And by signing that plea deal, you're agreeing with the government, you're signing that you admit to that lie. And as a Christian, I refused to lie and bear false witness, particularly in a formal setting. I also wasn't going to acknowledge a crime that I did not commit. But more importantly, Lance, I was not going to support a fascist government, a weaponized government, and support their machinations to coerce my fellow citizens into this lie and perpetrate that really terrible persecution.
So how long were you in prison?
So I was sentenced for almost 3 years.
Wow.
I served a full year, 366 days, before then being released because since I didn't take the plea, I pressed an appeal of all charges. I was vindicated at the Supreme Court, released shortly after, and then in January, completely exonerated of all 5 charges when the DOJ vacated the entire case start to finish, annulling it as if it had not happened.
Wow. All right, now this is going to be the dumb question you have to endure from me, but I'm piecing it together.
I've endured worse.
Okay, here it goes. Do you think you were singled out for that particular type of vindictiveness because of your role with frontline doctors and your stand against the government cover-up on the vaccine?
It's a very interesting question. Dr. Gold and myself, among others, have certainly been very noticeable in our speech and in our efforts to advance the truth, to inform Americans about their rights and about propaganda that is dangerous and so forth. I cannot say for sure if that was why I was targeted in one way or another. What I can tell you is that J6ers at large were definitely singled out, targeted, abused, and mistreated at a very harsh level above and beyond the average prisoner because of our status. I have documentation from the BOP with DOJ fingerprints authorizing abusive treatment of me. And that's obviously because of who I am and what I represent as a truth teller and as a supporter of the MAGA movement. So I don't know if it had to do with frontline doctors and that angle, but certainly we were noticed and targeted.
Well, no, look, they had a profile on you. Look, we're dealing with like the Stasi police. They knew who you were, and they had a profile, and you represented one of the heads they wanted to hunt, make an example out of anybody that leads an informed movement. Speakers that day, you were a speaker. So you would be one of the ringleaders of the Nazarenes as far as that goes. But you had solitary confinement for a period of time, and you had this prison situation. You didn't lose hope. How did this affect your spiritual life? I mean, some people would crack and deny, well, Jesus, how could you let this happen to me? Other people, I don't know how it affects them because I haven't gone through it. How about you?
Great question, Lance. And that's my favorite part of the story. I've always told folks that the only reason I made the decision that I did to refuse the plea, to really take the hard road, knowing I'd go to prison. I couldn't have known they were going to put me in isolation and do what they did there. It was horrific. It's too hard now to really explain isolation and that kind of abuse. But let me just tell you, it's not anything you'd wish on your worst enemy. I encourage folks to go to johnstrand.com and get the book that I wrote because I tell the story in detail. But to your question, it's only God and the faith that I have, the confidence that I have in God's mercy and his sovereignty and his power, that I was able to make the decision to walk that very dark and difficult road. And it's only that power and mercy of God that kept me sane in a situation that would destroy the minds of many people, and causes many of them to actually die with suicide and other traumas. So it was very serious, and God was mighty to save. I truly believe that. I know that it's proven. It's written in my heart now, and it's a really amazing story. So I'm very grateful for God's mercy, and not only that, but to learn a really powerful lesson that He allows pain and trauma in our lives for a purpose. Our lives are built for purpose all the way around. Pain and trauma and suffering is a part of that. Jesus said, you will face persecutions. People will hate you because you love me. And I am a grateful and proud Christian. And that faith is what informed me and empowered me to survive this experience, to withstand that trauma and persecution. And it really has strengthened my faith and inspired me to continue forward with the mission that God has given me.
Well, when I think of Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon,
yes,
John Strand,
Patriots.
And I mean, you guys never should have had the weaponized government come after you to bankrupt you, intimidate you, destroy you, expose you to potential criminal destruction in a penal system, and then basically scar you for life. And thank God you came out, and you've come out stronger. But there are still people that are J6 prisoners, aren't they?
Oh my goodness, there are still a few in prison, but most of them, despite having been pardoned by Trump and released, which was of course the right, correct constitutional thing to do, but they have been destroyed. Lance, you mentioned it, but I promise that you and your listeners cannot know the first 10% of this devastation. We're very committed to informing the public, to educating people about what truly actually happened, who these people are, and how badly they've been devastated. It's a really important project called wearej6.com. And I've been working on that since I got out of prison and continue to work tirelessly every day trying to champion the mission of restorative justice. We're retaking a leftist progressive term to inform people that J6ers have been destroyed beyond what you can possibly imagine. And we'll detail this very specifically from a legal and practical standpoint, as well as just allowing the American public to get to know who these people are and hear from them sharing their own stories. So wearej6.com is going to help connect you with really powerful persecution testimonials. These are stories from the folks themselves sharing what has happened to them. It will shock you. It will absolutely devastate you to realize that our own government in this modern day could do such a horrific thing to so many people. And they knew what they were doing. This was intentional. This was with full knowledge and malice. This was absolute wickedness. So evil, it actually at times makes me ashamed to be an American. I say that specifically in the sense that I have seen what our government did with full knowledge, and it is absolutely atrocious.
Well, we've only got 30 seconds left. I'm sorry we don't have more time, but Patriot Plea is your book. How does that book speak to the moment, just so people know?
It is my call to action for the country to remember and revive biblical citizenship, to understand that God has placed you on this earth. And if you're in America and an illegal American citizen, then He has given you an incredible honor and privilege to be a citizen of the greatest, freest country in the world. That is a gift God has given to you. It is a responsibility He has placed in your life. And we must answer the call of our duty and responsibility as citizens. It's the other side of the liberty coin that we invest in our people is duty and responsibility.
All right. So, John, we're going to be promoting your book, Patriot Plea, and wearej6.com. I trust that right now you've got a free lane to run in, and you've got lots of opportunity to advance. We're praying for you. I'm glad we finally were able to get this broadcast done. Any final thoughts?
Lance, I'm so grateful for your encouragement and your support. I just want to invite everyone to continue following my story at johnstrand.com. You can get the book there and also learn what is coming next. God definitely has an amazing lane in front of me and some pretty exciting opportunities and plans that will be coming forth soon. And I know that He has those plans for all of us. He promises that in Jeremiah, that He has a future and a hope for us all. And I just want to really encourage everyone to pray and seek that plan and that hope that God has for you. And may God bless these great United States of America.
Amen, and thank you. And real final question, I'm already over a minute, but how old are you, by the way? You seem like a young fella.
Yeah, young enough. I'm an actor, so I play 20 to 40.
Well, you're doing both pretty well right now. All right.
That's perfect.
All right. Well, Mercedes, we didn't get you in the interview, but you're allowed one free question for a bonus round.
No, sure, lightning round.
No, I'm just kind of overwhelmed by your whole story. It's honestly the first time I've personally heard it. And, we had another interview recently with a woman named Jenny Donnelly, and a lot of what she's going through just reminds me of the book of Acts. And I think nothing really sickens God more than a corrupt justice system. Reminds me of Isaiah, where justice falls in the street, and God himself clothes himself with justice and comes down and redeems. And, it's just like you said, it's sick. I think so many Christians have been lulled to sleep, to thinking that everything's fine. We're doing everything. We're reaching people with the gospel. Meanwhile, tares have been sown into our government structures, our justice system, and it's beyond corrupt. And it's sickening to think of the things that happen to you guys. And so many Americans, when you live in fear of coming home, is the FBI going to show up at my house? Am I going to have to explain to my kid, hey, put the dogs in the dog cages before the FBI gets here?
Exactly right.
It's a sick state that we were living in, and praise God, I believe he has a new dawn emerging, and I love the new line that's coming out of the administration, the golden age of America. And so I do think there's a beautiful lane ahead of us, but it's just
the church
amazing.
is asleep, as you mentioned. It's so true. It's so important. And it's a huge part of the last chapter of my book, which is my most important and favorite chapter, A Plea for Patriots. And I really speak to the misunderstanding of Romans 13 and many other myths and propagandas.
And that's the verse that says to submit to those that are in authority as unto God. Mm-hmm. And that assumes that the authority...
It assumes proper, legitimate authority.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But in our country, the people have the authority. In our country,
That's
we're
also
the ones in authority. And so when we pray for rulers and those in authority, we're praying for each other, saying, let us put in wise, biblical, just rulers that will represent the needs of the people, the interest of the people. And so it's a very backwards way of thinking, to think that we are like Rome and we're electing somebody that will rule over us. So it's anyways, brother, I think we're cut from the same vine probably. So I love everything you've shared, and I'm excited to see what God's about to do with you.
Me too. And I really do appreciate your guys' support. Thank you so much for having me on. We'll talk again soon. And let me know anytime that I can support what you guys are doing. And very excited.
Thanks
Lance,
so
really
much.
Proud of you.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Strand, standing for truth and paying a price to do it. Great guy. So we're going to be wrapping up this segment. Can't believe this went so fast, but here we are, running the schedule we got, but we got more, a lot more coming, so don't go anywhere. We're entering a period of time that has increased hostility against people of faith. It's a time when Christians are going to be tested on a moral, physical, psychological, and even a financial basis. I'm here to remind you that God is the one who has blessed you thus far, and he will take care of you in the future. You have a divine responsibility, however, to see trouble and prepare yourself. For example, with record inflation eating away at the value of the US dollar, the savings in your retirement account is in danger of slipping away. I recommend diversifying your 401k or IRA out of paper assets and into physical gold. And the best way to do that is with a gold IRA from Birch Gold Group. Now that includes no penalties, there's no taxes when you transfer current retirement funds into Birch Gold. To see how it works, I want you to go to lancewallnau.com/Birch and get your free info kit, and you'll be glad that you did. All right, let's do a real quick recap on what's the big things happening this week that you got to really think about. And I think the way to look at it, start with image 9 in my producer's cave back there. Doge is literally one of the most popular government initiatives in history. This poster says on X. 73% of Americans say they support cutting government waste. Trump brought in the smartest man on earth to do it. The left destroyed Elon for it. The GOP won't vote on it. I can't believe this. Elon Musk adds his comment, did my best. He wasn't arguing with this post. He's saying, I did my best. And it's a tragedy that the darkness is so congealed in the realm of public opinion shaping that you could actually have, it goes to the protests in Seattle or the disgrace in Seattle, the weird mayor there. It goes to what happened to this guy, John, in the J6 getting locked up. It's crazy to me that Elon is attempting to cut fraud and theft, and he ends up having his dealership burned down. How anyone could be convinced of doing that tells you there are people on a hair trigger waiting to kill you and think they're doing God a service. On that cheery note, let me go try to figure out how to make sense of the fact that Doge has not been solidified because of cowardice. It's just on the hill. Everybody up there looks at the next election cycle. Oh, in 500 days we have midterms. Everybody wants to go back to their district with more Santa Claus's goodies. And I'm telling you, it's just something's got to change. And everybody goes, well, whose job is it? Well, Donald Trump can only do so much. So the truth teller becomes the guy in the pulpit, but he's got a narrow audience. He's got Christians listening to him. Then you need to have the truth teller in the podcast world. And thank God we've got our Bannons and we got our other people that are out there, but
Our Lance Wallnaus.
or me and you and doing our thing here. But Senator Johnson, I'm on his side on this. He predicts that he has enough Senate allies to hold up the big, beautiful bill. I want my president to succeed. I want him to get what he wants for Christmas. But I understand Donald Trump, as well as, and I'd say slightly better than most other people, because I've been kind of like linked with him since 2015. I've been with every iteration of what he goes through. And here's the challenge with the president. He is a showman, and he is in a sense, a P.T. Barnum. He actually likes being called that because he puts the greatest show on earth. And the great big, beautiful bill, the golden age of America. His thing is he wants the press and the platform he's got to always announce it's great. Well, in this case, the Senator Johnson Ron Johnson is one of the few, like Rand Paul, truth tellers in the Senate that says, listen, everybody, COVID hit, and we expanded our budget to accommodate a crisis by like $1.5 trillion. And we never went back when COVID left. We got so used to the pork, we're now shoving it into the system, and it's creating a potential economic collapse. You do not want America to have an economic collapse when in July, the BRICS nations, including Russia, our sworn enemy, and China, and the other countries that would just be happy to see us get our comeuppance and disconnect from the dollar, they're going to meet to figure out just what they could do or what the timeline is for them dismantling the American dollar and having their own currency with their own power over the world. Ron Johnson is sounding the alarm. And he's saying, I'm not telling you got to cut the two sacred cows, Medicaid and Social Security. Nobody will ever get elected if it touches those two sacred elements. He said, but I think we got close to $1 trillion of fat we can eliminate just in what we put into the budget since COVID. It just makes sense. Go back to where you were in the pre-pandemic days when you didn't have the bloated additional money flowing around. He says it can be done. But to do that, they need to go through the 2,000 items line by line. He said there's 100 million here, 100 million there. He said you just got to go through the non-Social Security Medicaid items. And he said, and that's where the hard work is. And no politician wants to do it because somebody in their dang backyard that gets a little pork out of that who contributes to them is going to say, I'm a little concerned about what you're going to be doing with that. Fill in the blank. But his contention is that the bill will almost certainly add to our deficits and our debt. I know I've heard Ron Johnson, I've heard Steve Miller, I've heard everybody that I love tell me why it's a great deal. But here's what they do. They play smoke and mirrors. It's based on a 10-year projection. If we get this income in and if this and that, then in 10 years, it really reduces the deficit. But you see, it's always make-believe in the future. You've got to actually cut the spending now. Anyway, Ron Johnson has his work cut out for him because all the senators are under this pressure. Other senators, like Senator Josh Hawley, who I really like, have expressed almost, I don't think we're going to be able to get reelected if we don't pass this bill, meaning they don't want to be known as the people that cut something that their constituents want. And there it is. You almost need, the term limits idea almost makes sense when you think about 2 terms for a senator or something, or it says 12 years, because someone needs to have the courage to say, I'm not running for reelection. I'm doing what's right.
Yeah.
But anyway, so DeSantis says something interesting. He slams Congress in this article here on the Hill for not acting on DOGE cuts. He calls it a betrayal of the voters. I think this is item 10 there in my producer's list. Florida Governor DeSantis criticizes Congress Tuesday for not moving to codify the cuts implemented by the DOGE. He says this, and DeSantis is correct. Elon Musk took massive incoming, including attacks on his companies, as well as personal smears, to lead the effort on DOGE. He became public enemy number 1 of legacy media around the world. To see Republicans in Congress cast aside any meaningful spending reductions and, in fact, fully fund things like USAID is demoralizing and represents a betrayal of the voters who elected them. Man, I sure hope that doesn't bleed into the sentiments that is going to go into the midterms in less than 500 days. President's got to gamble here that he's going to be able to turn the economy around and have positive cash flow and enough money coming in with the GDP going up so that interest rates will stay low. Here's the thing that Bannon says. It's a little complex for those of us that are just trying to keep up with it all. But the debt that we carry produces nervousness in the bond markets. And then the Treasury has to kind of like do its long-term yield at like 5% for 10 years or so. And what happens is our fiscal credibility begins to create anxiety around the world. That's the reason why gold keeps going up, because nobody really thinks there's a resolve to get the real demon slain. And that's the addiction to sugar spending.
Do you think like in midterms, we have an opportunity to unseat kind of rhino incumbents and get in America First candidates for Congress?
Well, you take a look at, we only got a couple that are willing to slay this bear. I mean, we got a few. We only got like 7 in Congress, and we've got 3 or 4 in the Senate. And it's just not enough. That's why it's the voice of the populace. It's got to become the people. And we have us. You know, Steve Miller is so articulate. He's sitting there saying it's impossible to overstate how exceptional and extraordinary the One Big Beautiful is. And you know what I hate? Don't you, and this happens to us in our business. I hate having people that cannot, how shall I put it? They're so sold on their perspective that they can't honestly tell you this is the strength and this is the weakness. It's like, you really want to sell me on something. Don't come at me like this is the magic bullet. Just say to me, it does these things perfectly. It doesn't do this. And we still need something to do that. So I got Steve Miller, telling me it's massive tax cut for fixed income seniors, no welfare or government, health care for illegals, terminates the Green New Deal, ends waste, fraud, and abuse in government. It's the largest welfare reform in history. Cuts $1.6 trillion in net mandatory spending, defunds the transgender agenda. By the time he gets done, I'm upset with Ron Johnson and Rand Paul for daring to point out that another iceberg and the Titanic sinks. But because it's a very persuasive package.
Well, and I think that they were kind of saying that too, that if everybody's got to lose a little in order for us to pass the bill.
And I love what Rand Paul says. He says, I'm talking about a 2% across the board haircut on everything. If everything has to be parallel. I mean, Trump's doing it with tariffs, slapping on tariffs, and everything has to adjust itself.
Yeah. Well, we didn't get here with one bill. I mean, we spent decades of terrible policy being passed, and it's going to take us probably decades to get out of it. There's only so much an executive order can do. But I will say, if Congress and Senate doesn't start to codify some of these changes, we really do have an issue, because then it's just a one-man band up there.
It is. By the way, Trump, all hail to the chief. He's going after Harvard. I want to have to get this story in here with 1 minute left. You know why? Harvard is so weirdly Marxist, so, equality outcome. Listen to this. I did not know this. But they've got, not only, I knew that they had billions of dollars that they're sitting on, and they still come to the government for money. The admissions rates for the top academic performance, in other words, they admission by race. I thought at Harvard you have to have SATs and grades and be able to do math or something. The administration says that the rates for the highest academic decile or category, 56% African Americans, 31% Hispanics, 15% for whites, 13% for Asians. That's not because 56% of African Americans and 31% of Hispanics were scoring better. It just meant that they're bringing students in by quota. That's called equity. They're literally saying, I don't care how intelligent you are, how gifted or capable or motivated. We're going to solve our race problem here at Harvard. Harvard is actually now requiring remedial math because many of their students need middle school math in order to become part of the freshman class. They can't even do middle school math because they're being put in there based upon arbitrary quotas with equity. Harvard doesn't need $100 billion of government. They're sitting on $100 billion worth of money. They don't need to be working with hundreds of millions of dollars of government contracts. I think Trump's right. Take them all the way to the Supreme Court. He's going to fight them over the 2% of the Jewish people there that they're being persecuted and pushed away. But I'm telling you right now, Harvard, I want to see that story blow up because it's Yale, it's Princeton. There's other schools that are in the same weird communist takeover. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say. 43 seconds over. And final thoughts, Mercedes?
All good. We're over as is. So all good over here.
All right. Well, I'm just going to wrap it up now and just tell you, Joe Rogan is reportedly attending church consistently. And Emmanuel Macron's wife needs to go down to our House of Representatives and motivate some of those guys with a sock in the jaw to wake up. Well, is that fair enough to say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, evidently, if you're not keeping up with that news, you're missing the important cultural moments of your generation. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Clean, safe water. It's the foundation of a healthy home, but hidden contaminants could be putting your family at risk. That's why there's Sentry H2O, the smarter way to protect what matters most. It filters out what doesn't belong and restores what your body needs. Pure, mineral-rich water that tastes as fresh as it is clean. Because your family deserves more than just clean. They deserve water that supports their health. Go to lancewallnau.com/water and use code LANCE to save 10% on your water wellness system. That's lancewallnau.com/water, code LANCE.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have,